evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung.
And I'm Carain. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Health Minister vows to step up rodent control as authorities study world's first human infection of rat hepatitis E.
Death toll from Indonesian earthquake and tsunami rises to over 800 and is expected to soar.
And thousands of homes are without power as Typhoon Trami barrels through Japan. The Center for Health Protection is investigating how a public housing resident in Wong Tai Sin became the world's first person to contract rat hepatitis E.
Health Minister Sophia Chan vowed to step up rodent control efforts across the city and appealed to residents and businesses to help keep their environment clean. Alarm bells were sounded on Friday about the city's hygiene conditions after a 56-year-old man became the first human in the world to contract a strain of hepatitis E virus found in rats. Health Secretary Sophia Chan visited the Wong Tai Sin public housing estate where the man lived to inspect the rodent situation. She also visited Kwun Tong and Chun Wan, which have the city's highest rodent infestation rates in the first half of the year. However, there were questions about whether the government's infestation data truly reflected the seriousness of the rat problem. University of Hong Kong experts have found rampant rat activity near the patient's home in Wong Tai Sin, despite data showing the area had one of the lowest infestation rates.
Of
course, we don't just rely on the rodent infestation rates for our actions, the health minister said. Health authorities are strengthening rodent control efforts citywide, especially in alleys with poor hygiene, she said. She added that officials were open-minded about using innovative means to eliminate rodents. On top of educating the public on maintaining hygiene, the government will step up enforcement against illegal dumping, including unlawful discharge of food waste by restaurants. It's been suggested that debris and fallen trees left by Typhoon Mangkhut a few weeks ago contributed to the increase in the rat population. Chan said the government was doing all it could to clean up the debris and trees by deploying extra manpower. When asked if the authorities expected more rat hepatitis E infections in humans to surface, Chan said the Center for Health Protection was carrying out an assessment on the first case. The center will also investigate how the man caught the virus.
The government says it is planning to replant tens of thousands of trees across the city that were uprooted or destroyed by Typhoon Mangkhut 2 weeks ago.
The Development Bureau plans to grow more native species as they adapt better to Hong Kong's climate. Over 46,000 trees were uprooted as Typhoon Mangkhut, the world's most powerful this year, lashed Hong Kong earlier this month. 2 weeks on, piles of tree branches are still seen everywhere on the streets as the massive cleanup operation continues. In his weekly blog post, Development Minister Michael Wong thanked all those who volunteered for the daunting task. He also revealed his bureau's plan to replant fallen trees, and native species will be given the priority. Florence Ko, who has the Bureau's tree management office, said native trees would attract more wild animals and therefore increase the biodiversity. Such species will also better adapt to the city's subtropical climate, she added. But experts said it's not that simple. Just that they grow well on the mountain doesn't mean they can grow healthy on the roadside in the city center, said China Arborist Association President Sammy Au. He said there are many factors affecting tree growth, including sunlight, temperature, humidity, wind strength, and soil condition. Whether the species grow better in groups or separately is also worth taking into consideration, he said. Back in the 1970s, the government had extensively planted acacia confusa trees across the city. With an average lifespan of about 50 years, Wong said these trees are reaching the end of their lives, and those found in a debilitating state will be replaced.
Welfare Minister Law Chi Kwong says a report released earlier this week by Oxfam is misleading.
The report has said Hong Kong's income inequality was at its worst since records began, but Law said today that it didn't take into consideration government subsidies to the poor. Yeung reports.
A report published on Tuesday by Oxfam stated that Hong Kong's wealth gap was the widest since records began 45 years ago. The Gini coefficient is used to measure the gap. The ratio ranges from 0 to 1. Hong Kong measured at 0.539. But Labour and Welfare Secretary Lord Chi Kwong accused the report of being misleading. Writing in his weekly blog today, Law said the measurement did not take into account government subsidies received by the poor. When they are factored in, the Gini coefficient is 0.473, slightly below the 2011 figure, he said. Oxfam had called on the government to set aside an extra $36.7 billion in next year's budget to help ease what the NGO saw as Hong Kong's worsening inequality. Law said social welfare recurrent expenditure was increased by an unprecedented 21.3% from last year. He added that it was unlikely for such an increase to happen again in the future. Yu Pinam, HKIBC.
Turning overseas, 2 days after a tsunami slammed into the Indonesian city of Palu, the death toll has soared to 832.
A mass burial will be held in the city, but authorities warn the number of casualties could rise to the thousands. More from Yu Pinam.
Rescuers continued to comb through chunks of concrete and lumber, searching for survivors 2 days after a tsunami swept through the Indonesian city of Palu, leaving many people dead. Trapped victims could be heard screaming from a collapsed 8-story hotel. Palu was on the island of Sulawesi and was hit hardest by the giant waves. As rescue